Welcome to Weekly Photo Tips on YouTube. I'm here with photographer extraordinaire Joel Grimes, and we're going to do a real quick interview. And we're going to start right now. Joel, your first question. How did you get into photography?
Well, yeah, I was taking some classes in high school, and they had this kind of electives where you take welding, sheet metal, and printmaking, and they had a photography class. And so I started that class and then continued on through high school, and then eventually got into it in the college level. Never thought I would actually get a degree in it, but eventually did, and then started working commercially from there.
Who or what would you consider to be the greatest influence on your development as a photographer?
Well, I've said this. We look at a lot of photographs, and we're influenced by that. But I think the greatest influence that I've had, looking back over the years, is the art history classes that I had to take in college. We studied a lot of the painters, and the Baroque and the Renaissance time period was a big influence on me. When I started doing the lighting, cross lighting, the Rembrandt triangle of a light, that time period really influenced my light. And I shot cross light for about 20 plus years. So I guess you would say that the painters had that influence on me.
Okay. What was your big break?
Really, I think having a studio mate that was really marketing savvy, that sort of kept me focused on the marketing side of things. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for that, I think I would have just died, because as you know, if you don't get your work out there, nobody hires you. So I would say, really, if it wasn't for that influence, it would be a tough thing for me to have survived. But I've had a passion for that craft, I think, all along, and with the skills that I think I learned on the marketing side of things, that really kept me alive.
Photographically speaking, what would be your proudest moment?
In late 80s, I think, well, actually the book came out, and I did a coffee table book on the Navajo Indians. I spent 2 years in the field, 400 nights I slept out of a Volkswagen van. And that was a pretty big project, I think, from the scope of things. So I would say that's the one thing that it sort of stands out in my career. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of moments. The first cover, your first print ad in the newspaper, your first billboard, things like that are always kind of like milestones. But really, the Navajo book was the biggest thing for me.
Do you remember your first cover?
I can't really recall it right off the top of my head, but I remember the first ad that I had in the newspaper. I was in Denver at the time, and it was for a home developer, and it was a full-page ad, and it was all created in studio. So I'm not a studio photographer, but I recreated this whole kind of like a cityscape with lights and mountains and everything, all with tinfoil and cardboard boxes, and it was really kind of a funny thing. But back now, you look at it now in Photoshop, you'd kind of think it would look hokey. But back in the 80s, it was pretty slick, and it was a full cover or a full page ad in the newspaper. And I remember buying like 20 copies.
Do you still have a copy?
Oh, no, I'm sure I don't.
What are some of the names on your client list that we would recognize?
Well, over the years, I mean, I've photographed for a lot of different clients. Currently, I'm shooting for Red Bull. I've shot for Volvo, Sony, Visa. I'm trying to think, Goldman Sachs. I'm trying to think of all the. I have a whole list somewhere.
I don't recognize any of those names.
Yeah.
If you could give one piece of advice to a person who is looking to become a professional photographer, what would that be?
Well, in the workshops that I teach and things like that, I always try to emphasize that we are inherently, I think, just by nature, people that like to create. And in that, I try to instill in people that if you have that desire to create, and that we are unique. There's only one of us on the planet, and if you work from that angle and understand that, and build a body of work, it will stand out. And so I always try to emphasize that aspect. The other thing is that when it comes to creating an income or building an income off of what you have a passion for, you have to overcome the fear of rejection. If you don't do that, you won't put yourself out there, because you put your head on the chopping block.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not willing to do that and get rejected, you will never, ever really make it in this field.
So your first rejection and you're done.
Well, you know, even in 20 years of being rejected, it still doesn't feel good. But yet, you think you get a thick skin for it after a while.
Yeah. Not to take it personally.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
In that same vein, what would be one thing that you would consider a marketing must?
Creating a style that's recognizable, that you brand yourself with, because we are really oversaturated. We have a market that's oversaturated with imagery, and you have to stand out. If you can't create enough of a kind of a look that separates you a little bit, that when someone looks at it, they go, "Oh, that's Joel Grimes," or whatever. If you can't do that, then you just blend. And so I try to personally build a look that is unique enough to where it stands out, fits my personal kind of vision as an artist, and then I will find an audience for that somewhere. The audience is there. It may not be a huge audience, but at least it's big enough for me to find that niche.
It's your audience.
It's my audience, yeah.
In that same vein, a marketing thing that you would suggest people avoid at all cost?
Well, there's a lot of things that give you a false sense of sort of like when I used to put my work in a source book like Workbook or Black Book, you feel like, well, now I've done my marketing thing for the year, and then you don't get out and actually make phone calls and pound the streets. And like we've talked about, reps and things like that. The worst thing you can do is put your sort of a false sense of security in something else working for you,
right,
and not really what you have to do. And there's nothing better than the artist making phone calls and getting their work in front of art buyers and art directors. That's really the best way of creating it. I think about or getting attention from the marketplace. So really avoiding a false sense of marketing that's being done by someone else for you.
Okay. And my last question, what the one thing you would want people to know about Joel Grimes? I
think I've said this over the years, and I always feel kind of like it's kind of corny, but we all would understand the fact that I, as an artist, have a passion for the craft. But I do say this, and I do have a passion for passing that on. And I don't know why that is, because it takes a lot of time, and there's a reward in it, but really, from a financial standpoint, I spend more time probably answering emails and passing the craft on than I really should, because it takes a lot of time.
Right.
But I just have that passion, and it's just built into me, and I love to see people get excited about creating and having fun in the process. I mean, even I have a neighbor that worked for Kodak for 30 years, and he's retired, and he was not getting into the digital side of things, and I kept encouraging him, and every time we'd be out and kind of cross paths, I'd say, "You got to get a digital camera and start shooting." Eventually he did, and he is having a blast shooting pictures. And so when I see that, I mean, he's not obviously going to create an income by that, but he's having fun with the process of it, and I get excited about when I see that happen in people.
Seeing the light go off.
Yes.
Excellent. Joel, thank you so much for coming to Maine. I want to thank Gary Lowell for setting this up.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Okay.